Welcome to the show where we break down the mental health stigma, navigate sobriety with humor, and prove that it's okay to laugh while you heal. Let's get real, let's get honest, and maybe a little weird. Growth is messy, but you don't have to do it alone. This is Sober Psychology. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back. This is another episode of Sober Psychology. I'm your host, Michael. Today we're going to be talking about gratitude. This is episode 14. We are plugging along. Gratitude is a very important aspect of life. And what I've learned is that it doesn't just affect your mental health, it affects the physical health as well. But gratitude isn't just something that we have during Thanksgiving or those awkward birthday speeches or the toast that you make at dinner, whatever it is. Gratitude is something that's very positive for your mental health. It's very positive for relationships, and then also for your brain structure, which the brain structure aspect is wild to me. But we're going to dig into the neurology of this all as well. But I want to give you a call to action towards the end of this episode as well. I really need your help on some stuff. So if you could stick around for the end, that would be great. I would love to get some input, some insight, some perspective from everybody else. If you're someone who is consistently popping in on these episodes, or if this is your first one, you've been liking and sharing and commenting on all the content that's being thrown out there week in and week out, I greatly appreciate you. I'm grateful for you. I have gratitude. And that's our key word for the day. But it's very important for me to let this be an interactive platform. Let this be something that everybody's in on because it helps me. That's the whole idea of psychology, is dealing with the individual. And to be able to connect with so many people on this journey has been awesome. So we're going to have a call to action at the end of it. I could really use your help. It would mean a lot. But we're going to talk about what gratitude is. Then we're going to dig into the neuroscience aspect of it, the neurology, about the brain and how it functions with gratitude. We'll get into benefits of it, and then talking about how to start practicing gratitude. It's a lot more simple than you think it is. I know that it seems very fluffy and like a Montessori school kind of situation where, everything's written in cursive and on a pretty backdrop and all that, but gratitude is tough. Gratitude is not only the happy, fluffy part of it, but it's also in the trenches where we see gratitude really, really start to grow in our lives. And then I'm going to give you some personal stories. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of it. I want you to see this from a perspective of not only just an overall defining of gratitude, but how it affects addicts and alcoholics like myself, how it affects everyday life, and then also see how it shows up in the Bible as well. So let's buckle up. Let's dig in. Let's get into it. First off, the origin, the word for the word gratitude comes from gratia or gratia, which is the Latin word meaning grace or graciousness. Gratitude is associated with a happiness emotion, right? And we'll see why that is, but it's an emotional response to a perceived benefit or kindness. We're going to see something as being good, and we're grateful for it, right? And that's just the bare bones. That's the basic idea, the premise of what gratitude is. But what does gratitude actually do to your brain? That's what we're going to dig into here. So there's a neurotransmitter release with all of this. And we're going to, again, I told you guys, I geek out on this. I love the science behind everything and how your brain actually changes. Because before, I didn't know much about emotion. I didn't know much about the psychology or the neurology of things, but positive emotion actually changes your body. Negative emotion changes your body. That's why you see a lot of people that if you're consistently negative, if you're stressed out, if you're anxious, you start to get sick. You start to change. Again, we're going to see this show up in the Bible too. We'll talk about that in a second, but there's a neurotransmitter release. So gratitude triggers dopamine and serotonin, and those are the feel-good chemicals in your body. This is what people are constantly chasing. When you are in a stressful situation and you look at your phone, That's you're looking for the dopamine boost of all of this. Now, there's good and bad to that, right? Too much dopamine. If you're constantly looking for a dopamine boost, you become addicted to the chasing of the dopamine. And we've talked about that in previous episodes. This is a lot of conditioning. It's a lot of working through it, right? But having gratitude, practicing gratitude, that's going to give you that dopamine and that serotonin that you're looking for. And you can look at the science of yourself. We're not going to get into the nitty gritty of the facts necessarily, of the statistics of it or the actual numbers, but all of this is backed by science. I'm not saying this just because I feel like it's the way it is. I'm saying this because I've looked it up, and you can too. But so that gratitude is going to have that neurotransmitter release where you're going to have dopamine and serotonin. Okay. So already we're seeing that gratitude's a really good thing. It's like giving your brain a little thank you note every time you express gratitude. Okay. And then it's going to go to a structural change to the brain. It's going to increase the gray matter in the prefrontal cortex. If you look at the episode that we talked about of your emotions and how your brain processes the emotions, you have the amygdala, which is like the alarm system for whatever emotion you have. That's letting you know there's something going on. But you want to move it from that to the prefrontal cortex, where you're processing through it. It's the decision-making aspect of it, right? But expressing gratitude is gonna increase that gray matter, and that's gonna get it to the prefrontal cortex. Now, the interesting part of that is that it's not just in the decision-making side of it, but the prefrontal cortex is also social interactions. So in a sense, expressing gratitude and learning to train yourself and your brain to be able to express gratitude, it helps you become more socially adept. And that's very important. Hang on to that, because we're going to dig into that here in a second. But gratitude is something that if you're constantly expressing it, it's going to help you connect with other people, right? And you all know this from your own personal life. I've been the kind of person that's just the Debbie Downer. I struggle with it a lot too, still, where everything is negative. Now, there's a balance. You don't want to be the person that's looking through the rose-colored lenses, right? You don't want to be this oblivious human being and not pay attention to what's going on around you. But having gratitude and being that kind of person that in the midst of the chaos, you're still taking that and saying, okay, how can I turn this atrocity? How can I turn this bad into the good? Find the good in it, the silver lining. It helps you begin to interact a lot more with people. It helps you to be more of a presence that people want to be around versus the person that's just always negative about everything. And then this is going to help with stress and anxiety reduction, big time. This is a big one too. If you're looking at the neuroscience of it, having gratitude, expressing gratitude, practicing it, weaponizing it even, it's going to help you. It's going to modulate that amygdala, right? And again, the amygdala is just the alarm. Okay. Once we have that emotion, once we're experiencing something, it puts your body into that fight or flight situation. So if something bad comes in and, say that somebody betrayed you, say that something bad happened at work, say somebody cut you off in traffic, it's tough in those moments. I get it. It's tough to have gratitude for that. But the hard thing is taking that and saying, okay, what good can come of this? What did I learn in this moment? And figuring out how to be grateful for whatever. Somebody cut me off in traffic. Well, thank God I didn't crash. That's just teaching me to pay more attention. Or, how did I react? Like, that's another thing too that I've learned about myself is maybe in a situation, someone cuts me off in traffic. The first thing I want to do is I want to tailgate them. I want to flip them off. I want to yell at them, cuss at them, whatnot. But there are so many moments where I'm grateful that I didn't react the way that I originally wanted to react. Because when someone cuts me off in traffic, it immediately goes to that amygdala. I'm angry now. I'm pissed. You made me mad. But if I have that gratitude in the midst of it, it puts it into that prefrontal cortex, which again, decision making, the social cues, all these things that I'm starting to develop. And I'm just grateful that I was able to survive through that. I'm grateful that they didn't hit my vehicle. I'm grateful that nothing bad happened to them as well. And it starts to change and rewire a lot, but it's starting to modulate that amygdala. It's something that we're working on. So you're beginning to teach yourself to have a sense of calm and a sense of safety in that, as opposed to just getting amped up and mad. And then you have the emotional resilience. This again is talking about how we're training ourselves. We're working through it. Gratitude is going to help you to develop and enhance your coping mechanisms. And what better way to do it than to be grateful as opposed to just being mad all the time? Look, I chase the whole dopamine and serotonin thing. I drink caffeine. I do the little nicotine pouches. And so I get it. Like, when you're amped up and you're looking for just a quick fix, if you will, of that dopamine, it doesn't teach you a whole lot if you're just constantly getting it. But if you have to work into getting it, you're going to begin to enhance those coping mechanisms. You're going to slowly train your brain and you train your mind to get to a point where instead of just being mad all the time, instead of being a negative Debbie Downer, I get to be this person who says, okay, this is going to be all right. It's going to be good one way or the other. So you got to think of gratitude as just your emotional yoga, if you will. Like you're constantly stretching out your mental kinks. You're stretching out those areas that you need to just expand, just to be able to breathe for yourself and for others to benefit from that around you as well. Some of the benefits of gratitude, obviously with the mental health, it's going to reduce depression symptoms. It's going to improve life satisfaction. And like even the grumpiest among us, and yes, I'm talking about you Monday haters, you can benefit from this. Rewiring your brain. Instead of the immediate anger, amped up, I want to burn the world down kind of mentality, that gratitude is going to quickly put you in a state of just being grateful, to be alive, to be breathing, you begin to see things differently. You accept things differently. And again, we're not looking through rose-colored lenses. If you're expecting like some happy, fluffy message, I'm the wrong guy. I struggle with this. I'm a human being. But gratitude's also going to really improve with our relationships. It's going to strengthen bonds through the appreciation and kindness that we express. And like a way that is good for this, like I'm very bad, especially in my marriage, where my wife will do things consistently and I begin to take those for granted, right? Even if it's just someone made coffee for you in the morning, that's easy to overlook. Like all they had to do was pour some grounds in the top and then pour some water into the tank, and then there we go, I had coffee. But taking the time to say, hey, thank you for making that coffee for me. People are constantly doing things for us and we're not paying attention to it, and being very intentional in our relationship of saying, and maybe it's awkward at first because you're not used to it, but like a good practice tip for that is just saying, thank you for doing that. Thanks for taking the time, because thank you, they're thinking about you. Thank you for thinking about me. Thank you for putting my interest first, whatever it is. But this is going to begin to strengthen your bond through the appreciation and kindness that you're going to show in the relationship. And I guarantee you, guys, for instance, how do we say this and keep this kid friendly? If your sex life in your marriage is lacking, there could be something going on with your wife for sure. But what I've found is 9 times out of 10, it's because we're not speaking their love language the way that they need to be spoken to. And if you haven't read The 5 Love Languages, that's a big one. It's not the end all be all of marriage books, but it is good. It's a good guidance point. But this may be one of those things that kind of unlocks that part of your relationship, or reinvigorates it, reignites it, if you will. But constantly showing appreciation to the person that you're with is very important. Try it for a week. Be awkward with it. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much for leaving the light on when you went to bed. And you come to bed later and, you still have that light on, and thank you for doing that. Thank you for making the coffee in the morning. Thank you for whatever it is, just little things. Find it. Start finding things to be appreciative of. Show gratitude in that relationship. And I promise you're going to see some changes on the back end of that, right? And again, we don't practice gratitude just because we want something in return. We practice gratitude because we genuinely are appreciative of what's going on. Then we have the physical health side of this. You're going to get better sleep. You're going to have lower blood pressure. Things like this are very consistent with expressing gratitude and showing it. So basically what it does is reduces that cortisol, which is the stress hormone. It's a very important aspect of like for me right now in my life with the newborn and all the stress that comes with that. Like I feel like my cortisol levels are skyrocketing. And I find myself being so closed in to my problems. The baby's not sleeping, or, we got to go buy more formula, more diapers and all that stuff. And that stress will get you to a point where you're so amped up and you're so exhausted, you're so worn out. Especially men in the midst of the newborn phase, our testosterone levels are going to lower naturally. So we don't have that physical response that we're used to, where it's like, you can just power through it, whatever. But finding moments where I can be grateful, right? I'm staying up at, it's 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and I haven't slept yet. My baby is screaming and crying but I'm able to hold him and give him a bottle, and he's calm for a second. I'm so grateful in that moment for the fact that somehow or another, I've been able to create life from all of this and have this child in my arms. And little things like that start to give you that boost, right? It's going to lower that cortisol. It's going to boost that dopamine and serotonin. You're going to get to the point where from the amygdala, you're stressed out and freaking out, to the prefrontal cortex where you're thinking through it. So all I'm saying is that gratitude creates a cycle for you. And it gets you into this really cool spot of having better mental health, having better relationships, having better physical health. And then how do we practice this gratitude? How do we get to this point where this is becoming a constant practice in our lives? I'm going to recap real quick because we ran through that fast, but basically your brain, with gratitude, you're going to have the neurotransmitter releases, where you're triggering dopamine and serotonin. You'll have structural changes to the brain, it's going to increase the gray matter. You're putting everything towards the prefrontal cortex. You're thinking through it. You're developing yourself socially. The stress and anxiety is going to go down, right? You're going to modulate that amygdala. And then your emotional resilience. You're building up this emotional resilience, right? You're stretching out whatever muscle that is that you need to have emotional maturity with, that emotional regulation. Then the benefits from that, the mental health, the relationships, and the physical health. That's all the science behind it, okay? So we'll just go ahead and put all of that right there, and now we're going to talk about how to implement this gratitude. One thing that has helped me is the gratitude journaling. That was something we've talked about in a previous episode as well. I used to have a little pocket journal, and anytime that I was bent out of shape, I was mad about something, that anger was starting to come up, I just immediately write down 3 to 5 things that I'm really grateful for. It takes 2 minutes to do that, right? Just paying attention, even if it's just sitting in a spot and saying, I'm grateful for fresh air to be able to breathe. Boom, just write it down. And you start to rewire your brain in that situation, okay? And push yourself to be a little bit more in depth than just being grateful for your favorite pizza topping, okay? Be a little bit more in depth. Like, I'm grateful for the fact that, I'm journaling. If you're typing it on your phone, I'm grateful for the fact that I'm journaling on a phone that has more power than NASA had when we put men on the moon. If we put men on the moon. That's a different episode, right? Different podcast, actually. Then we can express appreciation. Call that person. Text them. Tell someone that you're grateful for them, that you appreciate them. This is building that relationship. But do you know how many people need to hear that? I'm that kind of person. I'll pretend that everything's okay, but every now and then I'll have a friend that I haven't done a good job communicating with. They'll reach out and say, hey, I'm grateful for you. Thank you so much. This podcast journey, for instance, I'm not going to lie to y'all. I struggle with this. I struggle creating content. I want to, but I struggle with creating it because I constantly feel like everything I'm putting out there is just falling on deaf ears. Nobody cares about it. It's not helping, whatever it is. And it's so cool because I've had people reach out to me, people that I don't communicate with consistently. Hey, I love your stuff. Thank you for doing what you're doing. That means a lot, right? Just that little bit. It doesn't have to be a massive paragraph. You're not standing up and giving a speech. Hey man, I'm grateful for you. Thank you a lot. Guys are bad about this too, right? Because we don't show that softer side of the emotional wheel, right? But just saying, hey man, I love you, dude. Thank you. I appreciate you. I do this with my brother too. We didn't grow up in a house where we were all lovey-dovey, right? And especially the lack of example we had from our father. But I've gotten to a point where I really push myself to tell my brother at the end of a phone call, like, hey man, I love you, because I do. And I care so much for him, but I don't do a good job of saying that. I'm a very closed off person emotionally. I'm working on it. I'm very intense emotionally, but having just that little bit of expression of gratitude, that's going to increase our bond. I don't need to have a paragraph. I don't need to have this long speech for him, but just saying, hey man, I love you. That's it. I appreciate you. So gratitude journaling, expressing appreciation, it boosts both the giver and the receiver in that situation. And then you can do like gratitude walks. You know, you can look up the benefits of just getting out and walking in sunlight for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Just go for a walk. Just step outside in your driveway, right? And just look around you for a second. Okay, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for that stupid squirrel. I'm grateful for the neighborhood cat that is just gnarly looking. Like it's been run over 4 or 5 times and somehow it's still kicking. You know, like that counts. Just rewire the brain. So gratitude journaling, express appreciation, gratitude walks, and then the mindful reflection. This again is a consistent theme of every episode when it comes to mental health. Find a way to get to a mindfulness journey where you're putting yourself through this transition, through this work, through whatever it is, where you're training yourself to be mindful, right? And this could be like reliving positive moments from your day. Go back and reflect on what happened, because oftentimes we'll overlook it. We'll immediately skirt past something, like that person that complimented me on my boots, that person that, said, thank you for smiling so much, whatever it is. Like find a way to get that relive that moment that you took for granted, you overlooked. Be grateful for it. Replay moments where you were proud of yourself. We talked about this at the very beginning. You know how many times out here in Midland, Texas, where nobody seems to know how to drive, where I get cut off. I've almost had people run into me over and over again, and I didn't react the way that I wanted to react. I reacted in a way that was better than that I thought through it. Like I'm grateful for those moments. I'm proud of myself because I'm an angry little Cajun. And I want to say some things. I want to react. And I'm all about getting back at people. That vengeance is something that I have convinced myself I'm wired to do. But if I break myself out of that, and in that moment, I didn't react emotionally. I calmed down, I took a deep breath, and I realized I'm grateful for something. I can go back and look at that later on at the end of the day and be like, I'm so grateful, like right then and there, that I didn't react the way that I really wanted to react. So ways to practice gratitude. Gratitude journaling, 2 to 3 minutes a day, 3 to 5 things you're grateful for. That's it. Express appreciation, send that text message, reach out on social media, call that person, tell that person that you appreciate them. Gratitude walks, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, get out in the sunlight, walk around. If you can't get out in the sunlight, walk around at night. Just get out and get some fresh air. Get out from the walls, go walk around in your backyard, walk around in the driveway, walk around in the garage, walk around in your house. Doesn't matter. Just get up and move a little bit. Get your body moving. What are you appreciative of? And then the mindful reflection. Start reliving the positive moments. Don't overlook them. Don't rob yourself of that experience. Get to that point where you're able to say, okay, I'm proud of myself for this. I'm grateful that happened. Okay. I know this is a tough one too, but if you look at it biblically, I think we all get into a mode. Maybe it's because of the social media movement. Maybe it's just the human condition, but we tell ourselves all the time, like, my life is so tough. I have so many bad things going on. How could I ever be grateful for any of it? And again, like we've talked about before, my guidance point, what I can go back to and learn from the instruction manual, if you will, is the Bible for me. And if it's not the Bible for you, okay, that's fine. We've talked about the importance of a higher power, whatever that is for you. But having that mentality of my life is so tough, I have nothing to be grateful for, that's still a form of emotional blindness. You're blinded in that moment where you've convinced yourself that you're not going to see anything else other than your negativity. You've put yourself in that situation, by the way. Nobody else has done that to you. Despite what's gone on, you're putting yourself in that spot. It's in the very difficult situations of our lives, in the toughest of times, where that search for gratitude becomes something deeper and more difficult. But that doesn't mean that it's not appropriate. You see this in movies, you've experienced it in your own life. It's like, we do this too, where we like negotiate with God. It's like, God, just take this away and I'll be good, or when things are really, really difficult. Like I remember when I finally was convicted of some of my crimes and I had to go to jail. And that was a tough journey, man. That was tough for me because it was just at a time in my life where it was so transitional. It was taking so much from me. It was taking so much for me to be able to do it. And I felt like I didn't have anything left in the tank. I was running on fumes. And I realized that's where I was really digging deep with my gratitude. It wasn't surface level stuff. It was stuff that I felt like I couldn't see beyond the darkness. And it was difficult, but we see that in our own lives, right? And like in the Bible, we see this with Job. If you don't think that you have anything to be grateful for, if you think that your life is tough, even if you don't believe in what the Bible says, that there are stories in there that you don't have to associate with Christianity if you don't want to. If you think that you can get through it and not do that, fine. But go read Job and you will see what difficulty looks like. And that's an example for us, right? Job's story is one of unjust suffering. It's where God deems Job as a good man, and basically God has this deal with the devil and says, you can't convert this man. Like, this is such a good man to his core. He's not going to leave me. He's not going to lose faith in me just because you throw some things at him. And the devil basically says, bet, watch this. And so you look at Job's life and torment. It changed him physically. It changed him mentally. He went through so much. But despite his torment, he refuses to lose faith in himself. And he refuses to lose faith in God. He even had people tell him, his wife was like, why are you not shaking your fist at God? Why are you not just cursing God? But he maintains his faith regardless of what happened to him. And this is, maybe this is confrontational. I don't think it's confrontational, but I think that we have a moral obligation to maintain faith and for ourselves, because, we're morally obligated to maintain the faith regardless of what happens to us. And if you think that things are bad when it's tough, if you think things are bad when it's really tough, imagine things being tough and you become corrupted by your unjust suffering. And you all have experienced this. We've all done this, right? Things get difficult and all I'm going to be is negative. Oh, well, the world's over. It just sucks. What's the point? I get it. I understand that. As someone who was ready to end his life, I get that. I've been at those depths. I've been at the depths where you can't see a way out, and it's difficult. But our mission here is to aim up, to continue to reach. It's time to get to a point where you train yourself to turn your pain into some form of purpose, to turn the atrocities into some type of weaponized way to better life, okay? And treating others the way that we want to be treated in the midst of that. If every time something bad happens to you, if every time something doesn't work out the way that you want it to work out, and your immediate reaction is to go and hurt somebody else because of that, that's called a bully, and that's someone who is not emotionally mature. That's someone who has not found a way for emotional regulation, and chances are you're not really leaning on a higher power. We've talked about this before. If all of your problems are right here in front of your face, then everything in your life is now smaller than those problems. But if you're putting your higher power right here, I know it's going to be okay. I know that you're in control and I'm not. Then all of your problems become smaller than what's directly in front of your face. It takes courage to get to this point. It takes bravery to do what you need to do to work yourself into a positive mindset. And take heart in that, because courage isn't based on security. And bravery doesn't exist in a situation with zero risk. You cannot have bravery unless you have some level of risk. Nobody can be brave if everything is perfect, everything is great. But it's in those moments where things are tough and you don't see a way out and you don't think that you're going to make it. That's where the bravery comes in. That's where the courage takes place, where you're saying, okay, I'm going to change this narrative. I'm going to do what I know I need to do to put myself out there. I'm going to work really hard to rewire my brain and my thinking and my heart to lean in, to have faith in a higher power and say, okay, I'm going to do what it takes to be healthy on this journey. I'm going to do what it takes to do the right thing. I'm mad and I'm hurt and I feel like this is unjust suffering, but I'm still going to love my wife. I'm still going to love my child. I'm still going to treat people well. I'm going to go to the grocery store and I'm going to get groceries. And although everything in my life seems to be falling apart, it's not that person's fault. I'm going to continue to love them as I should. This is a tough one going into rehab for me. It's because everything was bad. I told myself that everything was wrong and I played the victim in everything. But there were things in my life that were difficult, and yeah, maybe by my own doing, but let's talk about like the trauma. I didn't make my dad abuse me. I didn't make my babysitter molest me. I didn't do any of that, but that happened and I carried that and I let it burn me up inside. And getting to a point where I learned to be grateful for things, it changed my perspective on all of life, right? Like, despite all of this going on, I'm grateful that I'm not doing that. I'm grateful that I'm not being mean to everybody else. Now, I was. I'm not talking about when I was doing that. I'm talking about when I got to the point where I stopped hating other people for the things that happened to me. But it's very difficult to get to that point. It takes a lot of bravery and a lot of courage. You can do it. I know for a fact you can, because if I can, 100% you can. But rewiring your brain and getting to a point where you say, okay, I'm going to be grateful for this one way or the other. I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to turn my pain into purpose. That's the whole theme of this episode with gratitude, is like, how can you turn your pain into purpose? And that's what gratitude does. Also, if someone's doing something wrong to you, do you know how much that burns them if you just stand up and turn the other cheek? All right, hey, I'm grateful for you. Whatever you're going through, I'm sorry you're experiencing it. I'm just not going to give in and play your games. That burns them down. And that's not the goal of gratitude, but still, when someone who is perpetually negative is met with someone who is in the midst of gratitude and finding positivity, at a certain point, they lose their minds. Why do you think so many people hate on Christianity? That's like the one religion that people can just openly crap all over. And it's because we're challenged to be more positive, turn the other cheek. And if you're someone who's negative, who's only wanting to cause pain, you know how tough that is to deal with somebody like that? But that's just a perspective shift, is all that is. But for me personally, gratitude is a cornerstone piece for me. It's where God really uses things in my life to show me, hey, it's not all as bad as you think. And even if it is all as bad as you think, there's still good in the midst of it. I'm the product of being molded from bad things happening. You are too. All of us are, right? But it's how do we get up and walk forward from all that? I told you guys at the beginning of the episode that I was going to have some level of a call to action. I would really appreciate if you could just submit some level of a gratitude story, whatever that looks like for you, even if it's one that you just did today, even if it's one that you're just practicing after this episode. If you could message me on social media, if you could email me at soberpsychology@gmail.com. Just give me some gratitude story, something where in the midst of all of the chaos, you turned your pain into purpose. You found a way to get out of the nonsense. We're going to possibly use this in a later episode. And so that would really help me if I could get some feedback from all of you. So that's what I was hoping you would be willing to help me out with. But in closing, we're going to go back over this real quick. The key points: gratitude improves your mental health and it rewires your brain. It increases that gray matter and it helps you connect with others. It's going to help you socially. If you're a difficult person to get along with socially, start practicing gratitude. Just do it for a week and see what happens. See the benefits and see how many people are more willing to just lock in to what you have going on. It's contagious. I'm telling you this right now. When you see someone who is positive, but not in a naive way, like, hey, I'm going through some stuff, but man, I'm so grateful for the fact that I was able to wake up and fill my lungs with air today. I'm so grateful that I have a roof over my head. I'm so grateful that I'm able to sit down and listen to this podcast or a podcast. I'm so grateful to have you in my life. I'm so, whatever it is, that's contagious. People want to be around that. So that's another thing I'll encourage you to do this week is like take small steps. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be huge. Just reach out to somebody. Hey, I'm grateful for you. Sit down and spend 5 minutes of your day. You can spend 5 minutes instead of doom scrolling while you're going number 2 in the bathroom. Just sit down for 5 minutes and be like, I'm so grateful that I have this. I'm so grateful that this happened. I'm so grateful this person is in my life. I'm so grateful that I know this. I'm so grateful that God's allowing me to see things this way. Start practicing that. See what it does for a week, a solid week. We're willing to completely change our diet. We're willing to completely change our exercise routine. We'll try all of these different ways for the dopamine and serotonin chase that we're looking for all the time, right? But to sit down and work on your mental health in the aspect of gratitude, we'll oftentimes not do, right? This is one that's going to last, by the way. This isn't like a quick fix. Oh, I showed gratitude and for 20 seconds I felt good. No. This starts to rewire a lot of things, and it takes practice. Guys, I've been doing this now for 4 years, and I'm still working on it. But things can happen to me now, and it's not like the world is over. Things can happen to me now, and I feel more calm and at peace because I've rewired my brain to get to this point of like, okay, but where's the good in all of this bad? Where's the purpose from the pain? Thank you all again, everybody who's been on this journey. Thank you for paying attention, for tuning in, for sharing and liking. I would encourage you, if you see fit, to continue to do so. You guys are great. Love you all very much. You mean a lot to me. Continue to reach out. Continue to talk. Let's have open conversations about things that you're struggling with and ways to navigate through the treachery of life. But next week, we'll dig into episode 15, and we'll keep journeying along. Love you guys. Keep your head up. Keep your heart open. Go help somebody.